Hello everyone who's just waiting for BorderWise to make some darn tutorials and he doesn't do it. I am BorderWise, that's me. And welcome to From the Depths, the build menu walkthrough. It is part 11 and we're on to one of my favorite things in this game. Infamously, I am known as, well, the guy who likes the stuff, CRAM cannons. As demonstrated by our friend here, the Bastion, and demonstrated by our friend the Marauder. Is this going to hit us? Oh my word. That's actually a really good demonstration of why CRAM cannons are kinda awesome, because they do not hit as reliably as other stuff, but my gum when they do hit, oh, it is satisfying. So anyway, there's good news and bad news about CRAMs. The good news is they're quite simple, and at least, like, I don't know, they're supposed to be more simple than other weapons. I have heard from various people over the years that they find CRAM cannons harder than things like advanced cannons or energy weapons or anything like that. So I would sum them up as they are kind of straightforward to learn. They are very hard to master because, well, we can get into that later. But also, just to shout myself out, I have made many a CRAM cannon tutorial. I will not be going into super deep detail over the kind of Tetris you do, or like all that kind of stuff, but we probably will be covering that at least a little bit as we go over it block by block. So, first things first, restart the designer, and we are going to build a CRAM cannon of sorts. And we're going to start by placing a little thing here, and don't worry, you will see why we're placing a thing here. So, blocks, water, air, land, resources, control, AI, fuel engine, steam engine, simple weapons, CRAM cannon. So you'll notice this placement is not an accident. CRAM cannons are kind of a legacy system, really, because they used to be, back in the development of From the Depths, the custom cannons. But then advanced cannons were introduced, which kind of did the custom cannon thing, but better. So CRAM cannons were resulted. So the whole idea of these things is they are, well, slow firing, they have a low muzzle velocity, but they do an absolute crap ton of damage. So, as according to the tooltip here, the components of powerful gun emplacements. Relatively simple to make. These cannons allow the packing of multiple different payload pellets into the shell to extreme densities. You can create potent mixtures of high explosive, hardening, fragmentation, incendiary, and EMP. So, versatile damage type. You can just cram, hence the name, a whole bunch of different pellets into this gun, and I don't think there's any real life equivalent of these things. It's just kind of a From the Depths wacky thing. But in any case, first things first, the firing piece. So, just like the advanced cannon firing piece, which we'll get into probably the next time we do this, this is the bit where the bullet lives until it's fired. So, most important part of the CRAM cannon, the I guess origin block, main block, master block, attach the barrels in front of the firing piece, all other components connect on the other sides, and the CRAM cannon packs payload material into the chambered shell casing, and with enough payload material and time, it can reach enormous densities. The CRAM cannon allows shell gauges up to 2 meters in diameter, and as such can be incredibly destructive. So, for perspective, the largest, caliber gun in real life that ever existed, I think it was the German, railway gun in World War II, and that had roughly a 1 meter diameter. So this is already can be twice as large in diameter as the largest gun that ever existed in real life. So, there you have it, firing piece. The next thing, we're going to be bouncing around this menu a little bit. Next thing is connections. So, recently-ish, there are lots of connectors here. So the 6-way connector you are probably going to be using the most. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just the stuff that connects CRAM cannon components to the firing piece so they can do the thing. But there's also other options here. This one attaches on 5 sides. This one attaches on 4, 3, and 2. So, reason for this, if you want a multi-barrel CRAM setup, you can't just stick 6-way connectors right next to each other. That's not going to work very well. So you do something like this. And now these CRAM cannon pieces are all separate, and that's very nice. But we will not be doing that today. We're going to be sticking with the 6-way connections over here. And then what next? Well, you do need a barrel or two. So we're going to start with the barrel. So, standard barrel connects in front of the firing piece to improve accuracy and add some social modifiers. So, The regular barrel here is your go-to for making the barrel more accuracy. You'll see on the tooltip it says it counts as 2 barrels for determining accuracy. So we do this, we can look at this, and interesting things here. Max barrel elevation, max barrel azimuth, 35 degrees and 35 degrees, that is no change. Barrel rotation speed, 5 degrees per second. You'll notice that that is miserably slow. That's not good enough. So here's where we go to the other basic barrel, which is the motor-driven barrel. So barrels connected from the firing piece, blah, 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 and this increases the barrel rotation speed. So these are just aesthetic choices, but just for giggles, we're going to go a start, 2 middle, and an end. So now you'll see the barrel rotation speed is 22.5 degrees per second. So that's tracking a lot faster. Very nice. So over here, say you are putting your CRAM cannon on a turret. Currently we're not, just for simplicity, but that's when you'd want this. So this increases the elevation field of fire, but decreases the azimuth field of fire by about 10%. So again, aesthetics here, so we're just going to go here, and we're going to go here, and we're going to go here. So 4 elevation barrels is as much as you ever need. There is no point in putting more than 4 elevation barrels as a general rule of thumb. If there is a need for that and someone knows of why you do that, do let me know. But as far as I've ever found, 4 is plenty. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now you'll see that the azimuth is about 5 degrees. This does not wiggle from side to side at all, but it can aim way. So 75 degrees. Well, it looks something like that, really. So CRAM cannons can aim almost, but not quite 90 degrees up. 75 degrees is like plenty for elevation, because they do need to arc their shots, and so this is less because they can shoot at satellites very well. It's more so they can lob their shells long distances, because the muzzle velocity is bad. So you'll see there in the tooltip, the shell speed is 300 meters per second. However, we cannot fire, we do not have pellets, so we need to hop over there and add some pellets. So first things first, we're going to get our packer here. This is the thing that jams the pellets in to where they need to go. I'll just activate mirror mode, and I will do something like this. So what you're witnessing here is what I call standard diamond, because it's kind of a diamond-y shape. Connectors in the middle, packers on the outside, and then we put pellets. To start off with, let's walk through the pellets. So we've got HE pellets. That makes the CRAM do high explosive damage, which is great against squishy targets and squishy internals if you compare it with hardener pellets, which improve. These are by far the most valuable pellets because they allow your CRAM cannon to do kinetic damage and pierce through blocks. They increase the armor piercing value of the shell, so it can damage higher armored materials like metal and heavy armor. And they improve the health of the shell more than any other kind of pellet does, so that's very important. So starting default is pretty good for mixture of HE and hardener, generally does the trick. But as to the other shells, let's see, what's our reload time? That's actually not bad, 13.4 meters a second. This is not ideal Tetris. Please go watch my videos on CRAM cannon 2D and 3D Tetris for more detail on there, because I'll be yapping enough during this video. So there we have pellets, and we have barrels, and we can go kablooey. And here's the CRAM shell. So this is a pretty piddly CRAM, but it does like 2,600 kinetic damage and over 3,000 explosive damage in a package that is really quite cheap. So if you go to stats here, the material cost of this is about like, you know, 2,500. This is nothing. Having an advanced cannon, which, to remind you, we'll be covering next time, do the same level of damage will require a much larger and more expensive piece of kit. So this is where CRAM is kind of good. As far as material spent to raw damage, they are the best weapon in the game. There's a massive asterisk next to that, and we'll get to that. But for now, we should go over the other pellets. So, frag pellets. They add frag. So little fragments that whistle out and do all kinds of stuff. I actually want to make a nice party mix of stuff here. So let's do that. let's have a nice crammy cannon, because that'll be fine. And there's, oh, there's 6, there's 5. Okay, so, frag pellets, let's just add some, let's add them over here. So fragmentation damage, and once you've added frag pellets, by the way, you can go to, just let me fix this. You can go to this, and you can adjust the angle of the fragments, whether they, if you want to have something that just hits on contact, standard angle is quite nice, but if you want something that actually explodes with a timed fuse, or with a time after penetration fuse, or just something like that, 180 tends to do the trick. And just like with missiles and advanced cannons, which we'll get to, the damage of each individual fragment goes up the wider the angle is. That is a balance measure. So you see down there, we got 14 fragments that do about 1,800 damage each, but if we crank it up to 180, we're now doing 2,800 damage, give or take, per fragment. And if we decide to be silly and drop this down to 1, we're only doing about 550 damage per fragment. So we're just going to leave this at 180, and that'll be very nice. And EMP pellets, it means on contact, or like with a timed fuse. That's a bit of jiggery-pokery that tends to happen with timed fuses, again, in balancing. Does EMP damage, which means you can cook AI components and stuff like that. So 1, 2, 3, and now this thing is our nice party mix kind of thing. And then finally we have the youngest pellet, as I like to call it, incendiary. And you'll notice here that this is a recent thing. The devs have kind of duct taped a little yellow patch on it. Wasn't in the patch notes or anything, but I don't know about all of you folks, but I sometimes have trouble like telling these things apart. Like, let's see here. Actually all of them have different little symbols on them. That's really neat. Frags have squares, HE has round, incendiary has diamond, EMP has circle, and hardener has a cross on it. So that's really nice. Let's actually turn this off. So we can see, yep, see that? Little circles and stuff. Oh, that's so nice. That is so nice. That is so nice. That makes my life better. Because before that, it could be sometimes a little bit hard if you're like deep down in the guts of a turret or something like that. It could be a little bit difficult to tell the difference between an incendiary pellet and an HE pellet. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So, the incendiary pellets, well, they set things on fire. So, we haven't really covered fire that much. But, fire's good. Like, an AP incendiary cram cannon can be terrifying. But, cram cannons are generally at their best when they've got 2 at minimum and sometimes 3 at most pellets. But really, a party mix cram is great fun. I call it a party mix because, well, full party. Okay, so HE frag, EMP, incendiary hardener. Now, compactors. What does this mean? Well, this increases the payload capacity of the cannon shells. That's the wrong cannons. It's got an apostrophe there. The effect of a compactor depends on how many packers it's attached to. So, general rule of thumb, pellets are expensive. You want to attach, you basically want as many packers as possible connected to them, because that means you just get more connections and you get more packing. It's all very nice, and that's where you get into the whole Tetris of the thing. And given that this is a cube, the actual maximum number of attachment points for packers is 6. So although generally you like 5 does the trick just fine. Again, watch me Cram Tetris videos for more info on that. Link in the description and in the pinned comment. Hopefully, if I remember. If I haven't remembered, yell at me until I remember. But anyway, compactors. You'll notice that this cram cannon now has a pretty fast reload. That's a good thing, right? Wrong! This is not like the advanced cannons. Cram cannons are at their best when they fire one monster shell, so to speak, and just really jam everything into a big shell that does a lot of damage when it hits. All you're really accomplishing by having a cram fire quickly, and a 6.47 second reload is very quick by cram cannon standards, all you're really doing is making shells which are really easy to shoot down. So, let me demonstrate that. So let's put a local weapon controller here, just for 1, because why not? And we're going to get rid of the elevation barrels here, because this thing needs to have a nice azimuth turning thing. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna spawn our friend the Marauder. So you might think a rapid fire cram is a good idea. So bang! And then wait for it. This cram also doesn't have fuses, we'll get to that. So nice and fast, and it goes bang. And you'll see there's fun damage numbers happening here. And it's missed. And that's the other reason you might be tempted to make your cram fire faster, because these things do miss a lot. Let's add some more regular barrels on here, because this accuracy is horrible. There we go, that should be better. I also completely forgot to mention, when you have incendiary pellets, you can mess with this. So this apparently is a good all-round intensity for incendiary anything. So look at that, we're doing quite well, right? Well then, what happens if you have something that can shoot stuff down? So for this purpose, I'm going to spawn in my friend, the Kraken. So, the reason... Those of you who are new to From the Depths and wanting to test whether your cram cannon can do decently against the Deepwater God, I recommend testing against the Kraken because, oh dear, that shell has basically no health, and Seaways and Lambs will delete it instantly. Let's try and follow the shell. Yep, there it is. Splat. So that's no good. So you do want to make your cram cannon fire more slowly. And so each shell has more health and does more damage, etc, etc. So for that purpose, we are going to jam a bunch of these on here. This is not optimal, but generally you don't want to overdo the connections on these things because, well, they're very cheap, and if your cram fires too slowly, that's bad. So now we've got 3,000 shell health, which, by the way, that's not enough to get through a Kraken's Sea-Wiz, but, you know, baby steps. What if we made this bigger? Crams also scale with size really well. Oh, wait, no, we can do this. We can do this. So, general rule of thumb with cram cannons, according to people who've done the math, because I sure as hell haven't, is that between 10 to 20 seconds, well, about 10 to 25 seconds is an ideal fire rate. So, on the smaller end, 10 seconds is fine, but once you start making the gauge bigger, 25, like 20 to 25 is what you want to aim for. Speaking of gauge, you can make this bigger, because, like, remember what I said about this, these things having, well, up to a 2-meter shell diameter? This is only 1,000, but only 1,000. How make this bigger? Gauge increases. So all of these are basically the same. So we got this, the nice square, we got the top, we got the 3-connection one over here. So as per their name, these things all connect slightly differently. And the corners, for instance, connect on 4 sides, so you can go something like this. And then the ports connect, well, they connect on every side. And then the pipes connect on 2 sides, so that's all very nice. So now we've got a 23.53 reload right here. That's looking pretty nice. Shell health is about, what is it, about 8,000. So, let's make this a little bit bigger. Actually, no, let's try and make this max gauge, shall we? Actually, no, we can't. Let's do something. Yeah, I want to see. Yeah. This, unfortunately, is where math probably is a good idea. Let's make this big. Hooray! Alright, let's see here. And now our shell health is about 14,000. Let's see if we can get through the Kraken Sea-Wiz. That'd be nice, won't it? That'd be oh so nice. So let's see, does this thing... Aha! So that did not get shot down, perfect. Now we wait for the reload. Reload time is about just under 20 seconds, so that's not bad. This is horrible Tetris, by the way. Like, please, for the love of everything, look at my Tetris videos. I'm speeding this up to be convenient. And look at that! We landed the shot. We managed to get through the Sea-Wiz. And I was actually kind of hoping that was bounce off, because that means I can talk about fuses. Come on, fire one more time for Daddy. I think, did it fire? Yes, it did. It missed. Right. Time to talk about fuses, because I feel like it. Right. So, gauge increases, fairly straightforward, and now there's all this kind of stuff here. I'm just going to quickly go over these things. The interface screen and the predictor is kind of They're kind of outdated blocks, to be perfectly honest with you. Let's see, where does this go? Where does this go? So the interface screen, it literally says, a screen that says it serves no particular purpose. Because you can just do this by, you know, this is literally just a thing that displays the status of the CRAM cannon, except you have all the stuff about the CRAM cannon in the Q menu anyway, so this is kind of a legacy block. This is very old, so we're going to delete it, and then we're going to do the predictor. So, once we're aiming here, you'll see there's a little line here. Again, this is kind of a legacy block. You don't really need this ever, because if I spawn in, oh, I don't know, my friend the Marauder over there. So yeah, sure, I can do something like this, and you can see the prediction line, and I can fire, and let's see if that is going to land on target. It actually did, hallelujah. But yeah, you can still aim just fine without this, so just gonna make sure this is actually reloaded. Thank goodness for that feature in the designer. And bang. And yep, bang on target. You don't really need the predictor at all. Right, fuses. That thing I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about it. This is where the real cunning stuff with the CRAM cannon happens. So, we've got our fusing box, hit Q, and there's a lot of options here. Starting off, tip conversion. This is a relatively recent thing for CRAM cannons. So, by default, your CRAM cannon, when it does kinetic damage, it does, well, exactly that. It's kinetic damage. It is a damage type where if it destroys a block, and it still has damage left over, it will keep going. And will keep going until it runs out of blocks to pierce or runs out of damage. So it pierces stuff. Piercing damage, so to speak. Hollow Point converts the CRAM cannon to doing impact damage. So this is a little bit more like what missiles do by default. What that does is that it hits something, it does not penetrate, but it spreads out. So it's like, what's a good way to describe this? It's instead of piercing the target, it just kind of splashes out and like takes out a chunk of stuff. This is actually a good way to describe this. I am going to commit absolute heresy by doing this. The reconfigure loadout tab. This is forbidden voodoo. I do not recommend this. Just going to convert everything to hardener. And now this is just kind of weird. I'm just gonna do this. There we go. So we've got full hardener, and I'm going to, on the fusing box, do that, and I'm going to have a nice target-y practice thing. Now. Right, we've got a wall of wood. Now we will shoot at it, and this is actually where the predictor might be actually kind of useful. Where is it? Is that attached? Yes, it is. Alright, so... bang. Aha, we've got a failsafe. Get out of here. Shoot, damn you. Oh, we've got God mode on. That's no good. I need to edit out this whole video, I think. So, bang. So you see that CRAM shell went straight through that single line of wooden blocks, and, well, they just pierced through it. If I go over here, hit hollow point, let's see what happens now. You'll see it did not pierce through, it kind of, well, splashed, or, like, flattened against the surface, and kind of did, well, cause that huge chunk to fall off. That's actually a pretty good demonstration of what hollow point is good for. It is great for thin layers of squishy material. It is rubbish against very thick or high armor class armor, and piercing is just generally better 99% of the time. Hollow point CRAM is kind of niche. You really, most of the time, you are going to not tick this, and you're just going to focus on the fuse selection right there. Speaking of, let's get rid of this. Thank you for your assistance. Right, so first thing is low and high altitude fuses. These are pretty useless. You almost never see these used. It's just very simple. It explodes beneath something. So in this particular case, let us put some HE back on here so we can actually see what we're doing. Oh god, I managed to make the Tetris worse. This is terrible. This is terrible! So, if we go there, we're exploding beneath 500 meters. That's no good. So let's say we exploded below 0 meters, and we go bang, and low altitude fuse set to 0 meters. What this means is, it explodes below 0 meters sea level. So maybe we want to explode... I'll move on to the other fuses. So, that's that. Explode above. So let's say we want to explode above 100 meters. And so we aim up, and bang. And that was quick, wasn't it? Let's do that again because it was fun. So these low and high altitude fuses are, well, not great. Like, there's really not much use for them because other fuses do a much better job. Like this one. Time from launch just causes the shell to explode a certain amount of time after launch. So in this case it's 10 seconds. We're going to set it to 3, and then we're going to fire like so. 1, 2, 3. Kablooey, there we go. That's not very useful on its own. However, this is where we talk about this, the laser targeter. So, advanced cannons have a very similar block over here, right there, and it works basically the same way. It allows automatic setting of time fuse and altitude detonation parameters, particularly useful when used by AI, but also works from player control. Useful for exploding shells near the target, which may avoid a complete miss. So, a note about time fuses in the laser targeter. Obviously, this works best with HE pellets and frag pellets. But, if the shell is close enough, EMP and incendiary pellets can work as well because it effectively jumps to the nearest block. So you can still use a time fuse and a laser targeter with EMP and incendiary pellets. Not so much with hardener pellets, thank goodness. Can you imagine if that worked like that? That would be weird. In any case, we need to stick one of these over here. Thankfully, it connects. Not there. Let's put it here. Asymmetry for aesthetics. So there's an important little thing here. So offset altitude and offset time, safety distance. So generally speaking, if you're using a time fuse, you want to do this. So I've never touched the altitude thing because I never use altitude shells. But generally with CRAM cannons, you want to set this to something like 0.1 to 0.1 to 0.5, something like that. So below 0.1, but more, something like that. Because if you set it like that, if it explodes about 2 seconds after the target, that's pretty friggin' useless. This is a slow shell, but if it's moving at 300 meters per second, it means it's 600 meters away past the target when it explodes. But if it's 0.05, it is 0.05 of 300, whatever that is. It's about, I don't know. Somebody else do math, I'm tired. Right, so this now is one of the best and most useful fuses. So useful, I'm going to leave that on there. And time to fuse, if you're using it with a laser targeter, you actually don't want this, because the thing might be in the air for more than 3 seconds. So I just generally set that to maximum. So an example of this, let us spawn in a duster. See if we can hit the duster. Oh, right, I did not put the... This is important. Hehe. So we fire, we're probably going to miss. Duster is actually kind of fast. It might be too fast for a CRAM cannon, actually. Never mind, we actually managed to clip its tail off. Ah, I forgot to turn God mode back on. I'm an embarrassed person. So, that shell actually missed, but it still exploded and still tickled the target. So when CRAM cannons get very big and get filled with explosive and frag pellets, that timed fuse comes in real handy because it means even when they miss, they don't really. I'm gonna get rid of that predictor. Alright, so inertial exploder angle change. So, If your CRAM cannon does not have enough hardened pellets, it does not have enough armor penetration, this has about as much armor penetration as you actually want in a mixed CRAM. 25 is actually fine for a CRAM cannon because it does so much kinetic damage. If you don't have enough AP, though, it can bounce off angled or very strong armor. So, that's no good. We don't want that. And also, bearing in mind, and this is way down the line, there's this funny thing called a planar shield projector. This thing. It has a random chance of bouncing shells off it, depending on the angle and the actual strength. So, angle like that, and strength effect 10. Suddenly there is a 40% chance of bouncing shells clean off it. Why is that taking so long to get to where it's supposed to be? Grr. So yeah, maximum chance 40%, minimum chance 20%. That can bounce CRAM shells, which is very bad because CRAM cannons, if you set them up correctly, fire quite slowly. So if you fire your massive 2 meter wide across CRAM cannon shell and then it pings off a shield uselessly, that is a lot of wasted damage, so you don't want that. So, inertial fuses, and some people say that inertial fuses aren't that helpful. They are. Like, never leave home without them, really. So, they just cause it to, when the shell bounces off something, be it a shield or armor or even the water, it will explode if it's redirected more than a certain angle. I generally like to set this to about 12, because if you set this to 10 or less, it means that it can't hit blocks underwater at all. And sometimes when you're shooting at ships or just something that's kind of like flopped in the water and you want to finish it off, you do want shots to pass through water at least a little bit. CRAMs aren't very good at it, but it does help to shoot at things below the water just a smidge. Alright, next we have the penetration depth fuse. Again, I'm going to leave that on. This just means when you have a kinetic CRAM, the shell will explode when it punches this many meters through the target. So it's set to 2 meters for a reason, because 0 meters is bloody useless. Why would you have the thing on? 1 meter is not very wide, 2 meters, it's getting there. 30 meters is kind of silly. Why would you do this? This fuse doesn't see much use in this day and age because timed fuses actually are that built in. If the cannon or the AI is aiming for a block deep within an enemy craft, it will pierce if it has enough kinetic, and then the time fuse will take care of the explosion. So you don't really need pen depth, and you don't really need time after first impact either. So time since first service, blah blah blah, and then it explodes after that. So similar thing, except it's based on like time after penetrating something rather than armor thickness. So there's no point having both of these, and there's like no point having either of them if you've got a properly set up time fuse CRAM. Can confirm from a lot of experience. Also, you cannot use those with hollow point, so there's like no point there. It's not relevant. Speaking of fuses, why would you not click all the fuses? Well, because you'll notice down here in the UI, so you got shots hit fired, pellets, diameter, firepower, shell health. It's a little bit less than it used to be, or so it seems. It is reduced to about 80% by fuses. So, if I get rid of all these fuses here, you'll see that the CRAM's health is around 5,255. The more fuses you put on the CRAM, the less health the shell has. So just ticking all the fuse boxes, it's got 3,000 less health, so it's about 2,000 health now. This is why you do want to be kind of picky about what fuses you put on your CRAM cannon. Time from launch and inertial, 90% of the time, that will do just fine. Like, hell, depending on how your CRAM goes, you might actually drop one of these two, because it is important for CRAM shells to have as much health as possible, because these shells are slow. And if they have too little health, they get shot down really easily. Like, CRAMs have like basically more hard and soft counters to them than basically anything in the game. Like even missiles have fewer reliable counters than these things, and they have specialized counters to them. Don't you dare rant, BorderWise, we're short on time. Alright, so that's the fusing box, long thing. So, pellets, packers, compactors, fuses, predictors, interfaces, screens, laser targeters, gauges. What's left? Well, a few more barrels. We're coming back to barrels. Woohoo! So the main barrels we've already covered, so most of the time, if you're building CRAM cannons, the elevation barrels, motor-driven barrels, and regular barrels. That's what you're going to be using. However, there are some funky barrels here too, and one of the ones, let's just delete this, I'll show you how I actually build cram cans. So, what I generally do, if it's on a turret, 1, 2, 3, 4 elevation barrels, 1, 2, 3, 4 motor-driven barrels, and from here, depending on how big and expensive the cram cannon is, you got a choice to make. Regular barrels or heavy barrels. So heavy barrels are basically the same as regular barrels, except they're heavier. So the weight of the regular barrel is about 80, heavy barrel is about 160, so twice as much. However, it has 200 more health and 10 more armor. It is also twice as expensive, so really you don't want to overdo these too much. They are, they are pretty heavy. They're also slightly more fireproof, by the way. But otherwise, they function exactly the same as standard barrels. However, another thing to note is that because they're heavier, they do have more of an impact on traverse speed. So, let's just put 4 here. So traverse speed, 1, 2, 3, 4. Traverse speed is, where is it? 12.46. But if I replace these regular barrels with heavy barrels, 1, 2, 3, 4, it is now 9.34. So bear in mind, if you go ham on the heavy barrels, you are going to need more pivot barrels, or motor-driven barrels, rather. And that's the end of the, standard-y barrels, because then you get funky things. The recoil suppression barrel. I never use this thing because it's just, the main reason you'd use these is because the meshes are really cool, and, they look good. What these do is that they reduce recoil to 75%, but reduces shell speed to 95%. So say you are a silly person and you put a giant cram cannon on, say, a small boat. Oh, you poor soul making a cram boat. If you put one of these on here, you'll notice that the muzzle velocity has dropped to about 285 meters per second. But where even is the recoil force? It's somewhere around here, I think. Where is it? Where is it? I think I need to be on the firing piece for this, because I never check this. Alright, so recoil force... Yeah, I really never checked this. Oh, there we go, recoil. So, I just hit Control Z, that recoil barrel's off, so it's about 3,804. Recoil, put it back on. It is now down to there. I don't know if this stacks. It does stack. Recoil has been reduced further. You could potentially reduce the recoil down to almost nothing, but there's diminishing returns, as you can see, and now it has absolute terrible muzzle velocity. Personally, given that cram cannons tend to be mounted on big, heavy stuff anyway, the mass of your vehicle generally is enough to take on recoil. And if you're making a tiny craft with a cram cannon on it, what are you doing? Because tiny cram cannons are pretty useless. So the recoil barrel is the main thing you do is, if I hit Control-Shift-X, hey, I've just made a decoration for this. That's much better. Oh, let's do this one. This one's cool. Yay, it's here for decoration purposes and meshes. That's really what it's good for. And then the flash suppressant barrel. This one's slightly more useful. Similar story. So what this does is it reduces the shell speed to 80%, reduces shell detection range by 50%, and reduces muzzle flash and sound. That last bit is a bit of a lie because it sounds and looks exactly the same. Speaking of sound, shout out to the CRAM SFX mod that I use, which makes CRAM sound really good. I probably should have turned it off for this tutorial, but oh well, I forgot. So anyway, this probably needs a demonstration. Let's get something with a lamp system. What is a good lamp? So if I have a good lamp. What is a good lamp to bring to? Let's have an anvil. Let's have an anvil and then turn off the guns because it doesn't need it. So cram cannon goes bang and misses horribly as it does. And just need to go double checky over here that this thing is set up correctly. Right, so that is all set up correctly. Fires again. Anvil is going like that. And you'll notice about Ooh, oh, now I remember the thing I was meant to check. About 200 or 300 or so-ish meters away, the anvil just shoots down... Turn off, please. Just shoots down that shell, no problem. So, over where is it on the thing? Shell... Where is it? Where is it? There's so much data on this. Data! Alright, no, it's with muzzle velocity. So the diameter is 1,450. It's got a 574 meter detection range. So, in this particular case, that doesn't matter too much because the lamps over the anvil, by the looks of it, they're set to shoot at things within about 300 meters or so. If we stick the recoil absorber here, not the recoil, the suppressor. So now, the detection range is about 287. This is very, very useful if you're using a bunch of CRAMs all at once, because it means that enemy munition defense has less time to react to you shooting things. They're just double checking. This does not stack. Annoyingly, the detection range reduction does not stack, but the muzzle velocity reduction does. So if we're here, you'll see it does about 240 meters per second, and if I put a second one on, it does 192 meters per second. So do not use more than one of these. In fact, it's probably best to just stick it back here, because again, CRAM barrels, it doesn't matter what order you place them, except like you kind of do want your heavy barrels out in front so they can take punishment. So hopefully now we can see that the CRAM gets a little bit closer before the anvil zaps it out of midair. Doesn't really make a huge difference in this particular case. Bang. But yeah, flash suppressor, I don't use them that often because you wouldn't think there's that much difference between 240 and 300 meters per second, but there really is. That extra 60 meters per second can often mean the difference between hitting a fast-ish target and missing reliably and completely. So I generally don't use the flash suppressor. Speaking of other things I don't use, the last block, the bomb chute. So, this was added long ago because people were essentially using, well, CRAM cannons as a kind of, well, as a kind of bomb bay, so to speak. Not Bombay, India, that's different. So you'd basically have a CRAM cannon, like aiming straight down, and you'd have the whole CRAM thing set up, and you'd have an aircraft fly over something and shoot directly down on the target, which can actually work pretty well. There's a few problems with that. Firstly, if you only have one little motor barrel, you'll notice the accuracy of this is horrendously bad. It's like 2.20 inaccuracy. That is terrible. That is miss at point blank range levels of bad. And you don't want a giant noodle sticking out the bottom of your CRAM bobber, like increasing drag, right? So that's bad. We'll get to the second problem with that in a hot second. But the bomb chute is a very unique little barrel thing. So, it is a single barrel piece that should be used instead of, not as well as, all other barrel segments. It fires the shell very slowly but very accurately, has a huge field of fire, and traverses quickly. It is perfect for dropping shells from a bomber onto your opponent. So, it sets the accuracy to be perfect. It removes all recoil, small muzzle flash and sound, increases elevation, it has both fields of fire and barrel move speeds, and it has a fixed projectile speed of 40 meters per second, which means you cannot make it any faster than that. 40 is, well, terminal velocity, I suppose. So anyway, I'm just going to get rid of this, and I'm going to turn this back on, and we'll see how this changes from the bomb chute. So looking at all the stats there, elevation, azimuth, rotation speed, detection range, all that stuff. So now the detection range is very small. This is like only 115. The rotation speed is very fast, 232.53 degrees per second, because this is supposed to be used with a fast-moving aircraft. Maximum elevation is 80 degrees, and max barrel azimuth is 80 degrees. So this seems really good, right? There's a problem with CRAM bombers. I swear, I have tried to make a CRAM bomb many times, and people will debate me on this, and people have. If you've got a CRAM cannon, you might as well make it an airship, because, especially these days, what with the recent-ish, it was years ago, revamp of how CRAMs work, they get a lot stronger the bigger they get. you don't mount them on a small, like, bomber plane. It just doesn't work very well. It used to work back in the day because CRAMs work differently, not so much anymore. And if you have a giant thing, a giant bomber that flies over the top of something in a nice straight line, it gets shot out of the sky really easily unless it's moving incredibly quickly, which takes so much materials, and like you have to do so much armoring and just all that stuff, you might as well just have a front-siding CRAM airship, like this. So this is the Erie. This, for anyone who's wondering, let's actually turn you off, because like, well, the lambs is just going to delete everything. The Erie is not perfect. It's got a lot of things wrong with it, but this is a rough idea of how you actually want to use CRAM cannons. They are short-range, horrible muzzle velocity, but they do inherit velocity from their parent vehicle, so you charge straight forward, or bouncing in this case, and you shoot them in the face at pretty darn close range. Which is unfortunate because most people, when they see the CRAM guns, oh hell yeah, battleship artillery. And that's actually not what they're optimized for at all. So, I recommend against CRAM bombing. Like, if you want to, be my guest. Like, have fun. But something like this, and something like this, actually, is more what you actually want. So this is the Cassiopeia. This is how you do a rushdown CRAM thing. Because it charges straight towards the thing in a scary straight line, shoots at it, and is kind of hard to avoid. We are driving forward at 127 meters per second. It also has a nasty pierce laser on it. If these things collide, that's going to be very funny. They have collided. It is very funny. Yep, that's not... CRAM cannons are one of those things, is like, if you're really relying on them a lot, you might as well just ram. But CRAMs are fun. They are incredibly fun. I think that's all the CRAM blocks, and I think I've waffled enough during this whole thing. So, to sum up with, CRAM cannons, fairly straightforward. Don't be fooled by how many blocks are here. It's fairly simple. Firing piece, elevation, motor, and regular barrels. Connectors to connect all the packers and pellets together, and something like this. As for the actual Tetris, you're gonna have to, like, watch the other videos, because this is long enough as it is. So, just for giggles, we are going to shoot at a Marauder with some of these lovely prefabs. Here's the Ragnarok. It's very nice. And I'm going to stick a... Hold on. Do we have a local weapon controller in here? No, we do not. It in fact said that. Right. So this is definitely a way to do CRAM Tetris. It actually is a way to do CRAM Tetris. Look at this. Oh, 2D Tetris in here. 5 connections. 4 connections. We'd like to see that. Hello, Mr. Marauder. Whoops. Hello? 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 Hello, Mr. Marauder. Ragnarok says hello. They are very satisfying, and I love them so much, even though, in a lot of situations, they are kind of bad. Does this thing have any fuses? I don't actually know. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Support me on Patreon and YouTube membership. It really helps, and there's fun perks in it for you, like a Patreon exclusive Discord, where you can argue with me over whether CRAM bombers are... Damn it, that's loud, sorry. Over whether CRAM bombers are actually worth it or not. And at higher tiers, I will inspect your craft and review your craft. I will build craft for you. I'll do art for you. And that's all very nice. Also, streaming on Twitch, we are making a custom campaign. There is a shocking lack of CRAM cannons in it, but do not worry, we are working on it. And have a lovely day, happy CRAM gunning, and I will see you next time in From the Depths. Farewell. If you look down the CRAM cannon barrels correctly, it's like, oh, these are my glasses.